What if I told you that behind closed doors in Beijing, Chinese officials made a decision that could reshape the entire global economic order? A decision so bold, so unexpected, that it sent shockwaves through Wall Street, the City of London, and every major financial center worldwide. This isn't about trade wars or diplomatic tensions. This is about something far more fundamental, something that affects every dollar in your pocket, every investment in your portfolio, and every business deal that will be made in the next decade. China has been quietly preparing for this moment for years, building systems, creating alternatives, and positioning themselves for what experts are calling the most significant geopolitical shift since the fall of the Berlin Wall. And it all comes down to one word: independence. But not the kind of independence you're thinking about. This goes deeper than politics, deeper than economics. This is about control over the very foundations of global commerce. What happens when the world's second-largest economy decides to completely bypass the Western financial system? What happens when trillions of dollars worth of trade suddenly flows through channels that Washington and Brussels can't monitor, can't control, and can't sanction? The implications are staggering, and the timing is everything. Because what China is about to do has been years in the making, and the West is only now realizing what's coming. Welcome back to Revo Now, where we uncover the hidden forces shaping our world, and today we're diving deep into what many are calling the most significant economic maneuver China has ever attempted. But before we get into the details, if you haven't already, smash that like button, subscribe to Revo Now, and hit the notification bell. Because what we're about to discuss has massive implications for global markets, international relations, and your personal finances. You won't want to miss this. Now, let's set the stage. We're talking about more than just another trade dispute or diplomatic disagreement. We're talking about a fundamental restructuring of how global commerce operates, a restructuring that could render decades of Western economic dominance obsolete. To understand the magnitude of what's happening, we need to go back to 2015. That's when Chinese President Xi Jinping first publicly outlined his vision for what he called financial sovereignty. Not independence, not isolation, but sovereignty. The right to control their own financial destiny without external interference. But here's where it gets interesting. While the West was focused on tariffs, trade deficits, and intellectual property disputes, China was quietly building something entirely different. Something that would make traditional sanctions completely ineffective. Think about it. For decades, the United States has used its control over the global financial system as a weapon. The ability to cut off countries from SWIFT, to freeze assets, to make entire economies collapse with the stroke of a pen. It's been the ultimate tool of geopolitical influence. But what happens when a country decides they don't need to play by those rules anymore? What China has been building isn't just an alternative payment system, it's an entirely parallel financial ecosystem, one that operates completely outside Western oversight, completely outside Western control, and completely outside Western influence. Let's talk about the technical side of this for a moment. Because this isn't science fiction. This is real, functioning technology that's already being used by dozens of countries. China's cross-border interbank payment system, or CIPS, isn't just a simple payment network, it's a sophisticated financial infrastructure that can process transactions in multiple currencies across multiple countries without ever touching Western banking systems.
That's a very thoughtful point, Jack. Now let me quickly just break down what and how China's CIPS works. In case you didn't know, I'm Lucy, one of Revo Now's managers. China's CIPS cross-border interbank payment system was launched in 2015 by the People's Bank of China, PBOC, as part of its strategy to internationalize the Chinese yuan, RMB. CIPS was created to reduce reliance on Western financial networks like SWIFT, which primarily handles transactions in US dollars. By directly settling cross-border payments in RMB, CIPS streamlines the process, eliminates intermediary banks, and lowers transaction costs, making it more efficient for businesses conducting trade with China. CIPS is seen as a key tool for promoting the use of the yuan globally, supporting China's Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, and fostering greater financial cooperation with countries involved in that initiative. It also allows countries to bypass the dollar in trade with China, which could significantly reduce the US's influence over global finance. Till this day, CIPS keeps on growing, with more banks and financial institutions joining, And it is actively becoming a serious alternative to SWIFT. As it expands, CIPS will likely play an increasingly important role in reshaping the landscape of cross-border payments. I won't spoil the rest, so I'll pass on the word back to Jack. Catch you in the next dive.
But here's the kicker. CIPS is just the tip of the iceberg. Behind it lies a network of digital currencies, blockchain technologies, and alternative settlement mechanisms that make traditional banking look like stone tablets. What's really concerning Western policymakers is that this system isn't just Chinese. It's being adopted by countries across Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Countries that have grown tired of being subject to Western economic pressure. Russia, Iran, Venezuela, Turkey, Pakistan. All countries that have faced Western sanctions are now connected through this alternative financial network. And the list is growing every month. But we're still not at the real revelation yet. Because what China has been building goes far beyond just avoiding sanctions. It's about creating a new standard for global commerce. Here's where things get really interesting. China's approach isn't just about technology, it's about ideology, about creating an alternative vision for how the global economy should function. While Western economies have been built on principles of transparency, regulatory oversight, and international cooperation, China's system is built on different principles entirely, principles that prioritize speed, efficiency, and sovereignty over traditional Western values. What this means is that countries using China's financial infrastructure aren't just avoiding Western sanctions, they're operating under a completely different set of rules. Rules that don't require the same level of transparency, don't submit to the same regulatory standards, and don't give the same level of access to Western intelligence agencies. This isn't about creating a shadow economy, it's about creating a parallel economy, one that operates alongside the Western system but doesn't depend on it. One that can continue to function even if traditional financial channels are disrupted. And here's what's really getting Wall Street's attention. This system is faster, cheaper, and more efficient than traditional Western banking. For many countries, especially developing nations, it's not just an alternative, it's an upgrade. But we're still building to the main event. Because what China has been preparing isn't just about financial systems or payment networks. It's about something much bigger. Let's talk about oil for a moment. Because oil has been the cornerstone of the global financial system since the 1970s, the petrodollar system that gives the US dollar its dominant position in global commerce. What if I told you that China has been quietly working to break that connection, to create a system where oil and eventually other commodities can be traded without using US dollars, without going through Western banks, and without being subject to Western sanctions? This isn't speculation. This is happening right now. China has already established oil trading relationships with Russia, Iran, and Venezuela that bypass traditional Western financial channels. They're using their own currencies, their own payment systems, and their own settlement mechanisms. But here's where it gets really interesting. China isn't just creating alternatives for themselves, they're creating alternatives for everyone. And they're making these alternatives more attractive than the Western options. Lower transaction costs, faster settlement times, fewer regulatory hurdles, and complete immunity from Western sanctions. For many countries, especially those that have been on the receiving end of Western economic pressure, this is incredibly appealing. What's particularly concerning for Western policymakers is that this isn't just about avoiding sanctions, it's about creating a new center of gravity for global commerce. A center that doesn't orbit around Washington or London, but around Beijing. Now, we're getting to the heart of the matter. Because what China has been building isn't just an alternative financial system, it's an alternative global order. The Belt and Road Initiative, which many people think is just about infrastructure, is actually the foundation for this new economic ecosystem. The ports, railways, and communication networks aren't just for moving goods. They're for moving money, information, and influence. Every country that participates in Belt and Road is also being integrated into China's alternative financial system. Every infrastructure project comes with financial technology, payment systems, and digital currency capabilities. But here's what most people don't realize. China isn't just connecting these countries to their system, they're connecting these countries to each other, creating a web of economic relationships that bypass traditional Western-dominated networks entirely. This is why recent developments in countries like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and even some European nations are so significant. Because they're not just about trade agreements or investment deals, they're about joining this alternative economic ecosystem. What China has been preparing isn't just a response to Western pressure. It's a fundamental reimagining of global commerce, and the implications are staggering. Because when a country the size of China decides to operate outside the traditional Western financial system, it doesn't just create an alternative, it creates competition, Real competition that could fundamentally reshape global economics. The big reveal. Here it is. The moment you've been waiting for. What China has been preparing isn't just about avoiding Western sanctions or creating alternative payment systems. It's about launching what can only be described as a financial revolution. China is preparing to make the yuan fully convertible and internationally dominant through a mechanism that completely bypasses the traditional Western financial system. They're not just competing with the dollar, they're creating an entirely new paradigm for global currency. The digital yuan, which most people think is just another digital currency, is actually the linchpin of this entire strategy. But not for the reasons you might think. It's not just about replacing cash or competing with Bitcoin. It's about creating a currency that can operate completely independently of Western financial infrastructure. What China has been building is a system where the digital yuan can be used for international trade, investment and commerce without ever touching Western banks, without ever going through SWIFT, and without ever being subject to Western monetary policy. But here's the real revelation that has Wall Street executives losing sleep. China is preparing to offer other countries the ability to denominate their trade in digital yuan, settle transactions through Chinese financial infrastructure, and conduct international commerce completely outside the Western system. This isn't just about China. It's about creating a new global financial order where multiple currencies can compete on equal footing, where no single country has dominant control over international finance, and where economic sovereignty is the norm rather than the exception. The implications are enormous. If successful, this could end the dollar's dominance, reduce the effectiveness of Western sanctions, and create a truly multipolar global economy. What we've just discussed represents one of the most significant shifts in global economics since the Bretton Woods Agreement in 1944. China isn't just saying no to the West, they're saying, we don't need you anymore. This isn't about being anti-Western or pro-China. It's about understanding how global power dynamics are shifting, how economic relationships are evolving, and how these changes will affect all of us. Now it's your turn. Have you noticed changes in how international commerce is conducted? Have you seen evidence of this shift in your own business or investments? Share your experiences in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you want to stay ahead of these global economic shifts, make sure to subscribe to Revo now and hit that notification bell, because this is just the beginning. The real fireworks are yet to come. What topics would you like us to explore next? More on China's economic strategy, the future of global currencies, the impact on your personal finances? Let me know in the comments and we'll make it happen. Thanks for watching Revo Now. Until next time, stay informed, stay curious, and remember, the future isn't something that happens to us. It's something we create. This is Revo Now signing off.